Okay.
Is Felicia's?
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Alice Newland, the president of the League of Women Voters of Manatee County. It is our pleasure to welcome you to our first running for local office workshop. We would have liked to have had this in person, but with the COVID surge, we are back once again to Zoom. We're going to try to make this as personable as possible with our meet and greet this morning, and we are going to have 2 10-minute breaks. During this 10-minute breaks, you're going to go into breakout rooms with 6 or 7 others. You can run to the bathroom, get a drink, or you can stay, and we encourage you to introduce yourself, talk, and share with others in your group. We will also be posing a question at the start of each break that relates to the prior presentations. On February 14th, the League will be 102 years old. Our mission has not changed in those 102 years. That is, the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is firmly nonpartisan. It neither supports any party or any political candidate. At the same time, it is a political organization and advocates for select policy issues after careful study and consideration by its members. In 1974, the League of Women Voters ended its policy of barring full membership for men. From that date forward, men became members on an equal basis. Woo-hoo. How can we lobby for the Equal Rights Amendment and not accept men as equals? This workshop is educational and designed to inform the public and encourage active participation in government for the citizens. So whether you're attending because you intend to run for office yourself, or you would like to assist somebody else in their quest for office, you will learn something valuable today. You've received your workbook. The workbook is full of information. Be sure to read it and refer to it. It has advice and experience from seasoned campaigners and experts. It includes, but is not limited to, the things you need to consider before you run for office, the requirements of the position you are considering, a campaign timeline, mistakes and how to avoid them, other resources that are available on campaigning, and much, much more. Read the whole handbook now, before you find out that there was a pointer on page 15 or 16 that would have improved your campaign or avoided a mistake. Today, we have experienced speakers. You will receive the practical information that you will need to be a successful candidate or help your candidate be successful. You will get your questions answered, and you'll get questions answered you didn't even know you had. At the conclusion of each segment, and there are 3 segments. The first segment is a multitude of tasks. The second segment is press relations strategies and social media. And finally, the last segment is our elected official panel. We will be taking your questions at the end of those. Please raise your hand through the Zoom feature down at the bottom where it says reactions. Raise your hand and one of our co-hosts will call on you. It is our hope that this program will encourage capable individuals to run for office. Also, if you enjoy the work we do, we invite you to join the League of Women Voters. The first segment of our program today is titled A Multitude of Tasks. Running for office is indeed a multitude of tasks: filing, reporting, keeping track of all the laws and limits, Record keeping, setting up an office can consume all your time and effort. If you don't keep this straight, it can easily lead to mistakes, fines, and even not making it onto the ballot. Our two speakers in this segment are Scott Farrington, Assistant Supervisor of Elections, and David Ferry, Certified Public Accountant, who ran for Florida legislature in 2020. Scott Farrington has served as Assistant Supervisor of Elections of Manatee County since 2013. His extensive election and information technology experience are vital to current and future operations. Scott spent 10 years at the Sarasota County Supervisor of Elections office, beginning in 2000, with absentee voters and steadily progressing through positions of increasing responsibility, including election equipment preparation, poll worker training, information technology, and ultimately Assistant Supervisor 2007 to 2010. For 2 years prior to joining Manatee County Elections team, Scott worked as a software developer for Vertex Inc. in Sarasota. Scott was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and moved to Sarasota with his family in 1986. He graduated from Community Christian High School in Oneiko. Scott holds a BS in Information Systems Management from USF Manatee, Sarasota Manatee, and a master's in Managing Information Systems from USF Tampa. Scott and his wife Amy have one son, Jacob. David Ferry and his wife Christina and their 4 children have been living in Florida for the last 11 years. David is a native of Nashville, Tennessee. Before coming to Manatee County, David qualified as both a certified public accountant and a chartered global management accountant, and has lived and worked all over the world. Currently, David is Chief Financial Officer for RevContent, a tech company headquartered in Sarasota. David has worked a number of local, state, and federal campaigns. He was a candidate for the Florida House, thus giving him firsthand experience with setting up an office and financial systems. So, Scott, we've moved to you and your presentation.
Okay. Will I see the presentation or just everybody else? Sorry.
We don't see it now. Are you doing a screen share?
And do I need to share it?
I can share it, Scott.
Okay, either way.
We all three can share it.
I know. All right, come on.
But, yeah.
Here we go.
Okay. So again, thank you for the introduction. It's very, very nice. My name is Scott Farrington, Assistant Supervisor with Manatee County. Been here since 2013. I came in with Supervisor Mike Bennett. But today we're here to talk about, can I advance the slides or do you have to? Okay. About running for as a candidate, and everything I'm going to say is been focused if you're going to run as a Manatee County candidate or as a municipal level office. If you want to run as a state office, a state senator, state house, or anything like that, a lot of this applies, but there are definitely some differences. So if that's your desire, you need to look for a little bit more information. But today we're going to focus on Manatee County level offices. First, the first thing you have to do is you have to file. Some people make some mistakes on this, and the biggest mistake is doing things that they shouldn't do before they file. And what can't you do? Well, you can't take any money, any contributions, and you can't spend any money in furtherance of a campaign if you have not filed. You can't start collecting petitions. You can't open a bank account. So basically, you're very limited on what you can do before you file. So what can you do? Well, and the truth is, the only thing you can really do is talk about it. You can talk to your friends. Should I run? You can talk to anybody you want and tell them, I'm going to file. And this does create some confusion from time to time. There are people who've talked about it for so long, everybody assumes they filed, but they really haven't filed yet. So basically, don't do anything monetary before you file. Where do you file? Again, we're talking about the local level candidates. You're going to file with our office, the Supervisor of Elections office. If you were going to run for a state office, you would file with the Division of Elections. But county commission, school board, even all of the municipalities file with our office, except for one municipality, and that's Holmes Beach, and we're working on them to actually get them to file with us as well. So basically, you're going to file with our office. What is the filing process? Well, actually, filing as a candidate is really pretty simple. And what it entails is you, as the candidate, fill out 2 forms, sign them, and bring them to our office. They do have to be original forms. You can mail them to us, but they do have to be original forms, and you are not officially filed until they are in our office. Now, the next slide is actually the DSDE-9. And I don't want you to try and really read it, but I just wanted to show that it's not that complicated of a form. And basically all it is it's saying who you are, what office are you running for, what bank are you going to use, and who is going to be your treasurer. You're allowed to be your own treasurer. If you're going to have a campaign of any reasonable size, we highly recommend that you use a treasurer that has done it before. Money, as you can imagine, is where a lot of candidates get tripped up, and it's not a place you want to get tripped up. And also, if you're going to be a candidate of any reasonable size, have a large campaign, you want to have a treasurer and a deputy treasurer, 2 people, because only the treasurer or the deputy treasurer can file the reports. They're the only ones that are supposed to be writing checks, all of that sort of thing. So you as a candidate can be either one of those. You can be the primary treasurer or the deputy treasurer, but generally, if you're going to have 2, you're going to have the other person who's done this before be your treasurer, and you would file as the deputy treasurer. And then the next form that you have to file is called a statement of candidate, and it's even simpler, right? You just have to write your name, say what office you're running for, and then sign it. But what you're signing is that you have received and read Chapter 106 of the Florida statutes. Basically, that's what you're signing. And you actually technically don't have to file this paper at the same time you file your statement or your DSDE-9. But if you do not file this paper within 10 days of filing your DSDE-9, you get an automatic fine of $1,000. And so I don't know any candidates that haven't filed it at the same time, because no one wants to forget and get fined $1,000. So those two forms, that's all you have to file with our office, and you're officially a candidate. From there, now what? Well, this is where the money comes. And this is what I call the show me the money slide. You're a candidate, and with a few exceptions, mostly special districts like a community development district or a fire district or something like that is small, you are now on the clock, and any money that you spend, any contributions you get, any of that you have to keep track of, and you have to file a report for that. So we're going to move on to the next slide, which is talking about financial reportings. So this is probably the largest area where candidates make mistakes in all of this. And I'm just going over some of the highlights of the rules. There are more than this, but $1,000 contribution limit per person per election. This doesn't apply to how much money you give your own campaign. There is no limit on how much, and they call it a loan. It's not a contribution. If you as a candidate want to give yourself $100,000, you can loan your campaign $100,000. There is no limit. It does apply to in-kind contributions. Now, if you're kind of new to this, you're like, what's an in-kind contribution? If you're a candidate and you're looking for contributions, and you go to your friend and he goes, I can't give you money, but I own a t-shirt business and I'll give you 100 t-shirts with your name on it instead of giving you money. Perfectly acceptable, but that's called an in-kind contribution. That $1,000 limit applies to that in-kind contribution. So they can only give you a product or a service up to the value of that $1,000. You can only accept cash in $50 or less. It isn't as common now, but it used to be very common that you would get a lot of cash contributions. You cannot do that anymore. $50 is the limit, and they can't give you $50 today and $50 tomorrow. It's a $50 limit per person. You have to, when you are reporting, you have to report the name and address for each contribution. There are no exceptions to that. Even if it's a $20 cash contribution, you must give us the name and the address of that contributor. That means absolutely no anonymous contributions. At one point in time, people would have fundraisers. They called it the fishbowl or the punch bowl, and people would just walk through as they were going and throw money in it. You cannot do that. Absolutely, you'll get in trouble for that. Or if you don't get in trouble, you can't spend the money even if you do get it. You must list the occupation for any contributions of $100 or more. And that also actually applies if someone gives you a $50 contribution today and a $50 contribution tomorrow, that's $100. You now have to report that contributor's occupation. You must file on time. There are automatic fines that we cannot waive. The Supervisor of Elections has absolutely no authority to waive any fine. They get pretty steep. It's $50, automatic $50 a day for the first 3 days, and then it jumps to $500 a day for every day thereafter. If you are having a small campaign, or if it's early in your campaign and you haven't received any money, you haven't spent any money yet, you still have to file your waiver. So a waiver is just basically a piece of paper or a form that says, I didn't do anything this period. How do you file? Well, we try and make it easy, and it's the easiness is more for our benefit than it is yours, but it works in your favor. And so we have an online candidate reporting software that we license, and any candidate in Manatee County can use. And I'm not going to go through the details of how to do it, but basically we will give you a username and a login. You'll log in. It'll tell you what reports you have to file, when you have to file them. And then you just start logging in your contributions. You log in your expenditures. And at the end of the time, when you're ready, you just hit file report. It comes to us and we review it. How often do I have to file? Well, this is the reporting period for this year. So if you were to file today, you would be responsible for all of these reports. It starts out on a monthly basis. You would file once every month. And then it goes, as you get closer to the primary election, it goes to once every 2 weeks. And then finally, it goes down to basically once every week when you get right before the election. Again, our software tracks all those dates and they tell you exactly when you have to file. There is an exception to this. If you're running for a municipal office that doesn't have a primary, you can kind of skip the primary section and you still have to file monthly, but you don't have quite as many reports. But again, our software, once you log in, it tells you exactly what your reporting periods are. You have an option. There's a thing called petitions, and you as a candidate will either have to pay a qualifying fee or you have to collect petitions. And it's a decision that you make. It's totally up to you, but we're going to go through what might help you make that decision. And we're going to start talking about qualifying fees first. So for county offices, the fee is 6% of the annual salary for a partisan candidate and 4% for a nonpartisan candidate. And I'm sure you're asking what's the difference? And the difference really is that 2% goes to the state party. So if you're running as a Republican or a Democrat for school, or not school board, for county commission, You'll pay 6%, and we don't keep any of that money. The Manatee County office doesn't get one bit of it. It all either goes to the state or it goes to the state party, just depending. So a couple of examples, Board of County Commission partisan candidate, their qualifying fee is $5,514. A nonpartisan candidate, $3,676. If you're going to run for school board, the qualifying fee is $1,296. So that is one of the things that you're going to use to decide, is it worth it to me to collect these petitions, or do I just want to pay these fees? Now, special districts, CDDs, fire districts, mosquito control districts, things like that, there it's just a flat $25 fee. So there's not a huge cost on that. And then municipalities, they're all different. Every single municipality sets their own rate, and they're all different, but they're all in the range of $50 to a couple of $100. They're not in the thousands. None of them get into the thousands. So now we're going to talk about petitions. So if you're going to want to collect petitions, and the reason you could collect petition is so you don't have to pay that qualifying fee, you still have to pay, and you have to pay our office 10 cents for every petition verification that we do. You must collect at least 1% of the registered voters of the district being sought. So if, for example, the Board of County Commission for District 2, and we talked about this a little bit before, it's 547 petitions. So the way we get that, because this is a redistricting year, we take the total voter registration of the entire county, divide it by 5, because there's 5 county commission districts, take 1% of that, and that's 547. So every county commissioner in Manatee County, doesn't matter on the district they're in, they're going to do 547. Unless you're at large, because the at large district represents the entire county. So they have to do 1% of the entire county, which is 2,735 petitions. Again, for school board, there's 5 school board districts. There are no at large, so they all have to do 547 petitions. So you have to weigh, as a candidate, the cost. It's definitely cheaper. If you think 547 petitions at 10 cents a piece, that's $55 versus the $3,000 to $5,000 that we talked about earlier. It's definitely cheaper, but it's more work. But if you need 2,735, that might sway you one way or another. Special districts, like we talked about, they have to do the $25 and 25 petitions. There's no exceptions. They have to do both. There is a required petition format. It's called DSDE 104. You can either Google it and find it. You can come to our office. We'll give you a copy of it. It has to be that format. You cannot change the format. It's even dictated what size. It can be anywhere. You can change the size anywhere from 8.5 to 11 down to 3 by 5. You cannot go smaller than 3 by 5. And we ask that you don't go smaller than half a page, because one of the things that for us, we have to be able to read what people write on those. And if you get too small, and 3 by 5 is pretty small, it becomes much harder to read what they wrote. And so you might get more petitions that aren't acceptable. The deadline to turn in or to get your petitions verified is June 6th. So whatever the amount you need, you have to have those, and we have to have verified them by June 6th. So you have to give us a little time to do that as well. Municipalities, again, each one is different. Some require both a fee and petitions. But most of their petition requirements are like 10 petitions up to about 50 petitions. None of the municipalities go over 50 petitions. Qualifying. So you've filed, you're keeping up with your finances, you've chosen whether or not you're going to do petitions or not. Now it's time to become a full-fledged candidate and get your name on the ballot. You must qualify on time, or you will no longer be a candidate. There is no exception to this. If you are not qualified by June 17th at noon, you are not a candidate. We cannot make an exception for it. No one can make an exception for it. Qualifying week, it starts June 13th and it goes through June 17th. Now, this is for, again, we're talking about county candidates. There is an earlier qualifying period for judicial candidates. If you want to run for county judge or for something like that, you have an earlier deadline. You may pre-file, it's called pre-filing with us up to 2 weeks in advance. You can basically give us the paperwork to hold, but we cannot verify the paperwork or actually qualify you until the start of the qualifying period. And I'm going to say it again, June 17th at noon is a hard deadline. You come in here at 12:05, we're not going to take your paperwork. And we've had people do it, and it's heartbreaking for everybody. It's not something we like, but we cannot extend that deadline. Where do you file? You're going to file with us about local level offices. So you're going to file with us. What do you file? Everything must be original with a wet signature. So that means we can't take copies of a copy. It has to be, if it needs your signature, it has to be the signature. You can mail it to us, and we do have people that mail it. Usually they use FedEx or something like that, but it has to be the original. If you haven't already filed to be a candidate and you're doing all of this during the qualifying week, you first have to file those 2 forms that we talked about earlier. And then you have to either provide proof of that you met your petitions, and we will give you that. We actually give you a letter saying that we verified your petitions and you've qualified according to the petition process, or you have to provide the qualifying fee. It must be a campaign check. You cannot write a personal check for this. If you write a personal check and we don't catch it, and it is something we look for, but we don't catch it, and it's after the qualifying period ends, you are not a candidate anymore. And we've had that happen as well. If you come on the last day at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m., and you got 2 hours to file, you have to be able to go open a campaign account, put funds in that, get a check written off of that campaign account, and get back to us by noon, or you are not a candidate. You have to file a candidate oath. There are slightly different oaths depending on the type of office. Partisan, and it basically the difference is the oath that you say or that you sign to has to do with what party you are a member of and how long you've been a member of that party. There's also a judicial oath and a school board oath that are slightly different. So you have to file the appropriate form according to what office. You have to file either a Form 1 or a Form 6. These are financial disclosure statements. A Form 1 is very simple. It's a form that just basically says this is where I get my income from. You don't have to say what your income is. You don't have to say how much money you have in the bank. You just have to list all of the locations that you get your income from. A Form 6 is much more complicated. You have to list all of your assets, all of your bank accounts, all of the houses that you own, all of the cars that you own, all of the values, all of your debts and liabilities. And at the end of that, it comes up with a final total value for you. And you have to, as a candidate, depending on what your office is, for instance, school board or county commission, you have to file a Form 6. If you're running for some of the smaller offices, it's like a special district, a community development district, it's just a Form 1. Municipalities may have, and some do have, additional requirements. Like a couple of municipalities have a residency requirement that's different than everybody else's. So you have to file either an oath saying that you've lived in this municipality for at least 6 months or something like that. So there are some additional requirements based off of what municipality. So you are a candidate now. If you've done all that appropriately, you're a candidate. So now I'm going to give you a couple of the things that we see most often that cause candidates problems. The first, and by far the most common, is not filing your financial reports on time. Talked about this earlier. It's an automatic $50 a day for the first 3 days and $500 a day every day after. There are some limits on how high it can go. I'm not going to go into that, but it isn't I mean, if you never file a report, it doesn't get to $1 million. There are limits, but it's still, it does increase rapidly. If you're late on the report that is due immediately prior to the election, it's automatic. It skips the $50 a day and it goes straight to $500 a day. The other mistake that we've had is using a personal check to qualify, or trying to use a personal check to qualify. And again, usually this happens with candidates that are last minute. They're just running in. They decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. And they haven't had time to open a campaign account yet and go through the process. The only exception to this is if you're running for a special district, like say fire district, and you are not going to raise any money or spend any money, there is an exception for that circumstance. But everybody else, it must be a campaign check. This one, we haven't really talked about this, but this happens a lot too. Not including a disclaimer or an improper disclaimer on campaign material. This is part of that chapter 106 that you're required to file a form that says you read and understand. Anything that you pass out or put out, like a campaign sign, a flyer, a brochure, a mailer, has to have a disclaimer on it. And there's a statutory wording of what that disclaimer says. And so one of the common things that campaign candidates do is they either forget it or they don't do the proper wording. And then there is no automatic fine for that. What usually happens in that case is someone makes a complaint. The complaint goes to the state, and then the state decides what they're going to do. And depending on the severity of it, usually there is a fine involved. Not knowing or following the campaign finance rules. Taking anonymous contributions or larger cash amounts. If you do that, if say you take someone gives you $100 bill and you forgot about it, or the limitation, or you didn't realize that it was $100 until later, you have to give that $100 back. If it's an anonymous contribution and someone writes you a note, puts a $100 bill in it, puts it on your doorstep, but doesn't sign it, that's an anonymous contribution. What you do at that point is you put it in your bank account, you write the Supervisor of Elections office a letter explaining what happened, and you cannot spend that money. At the end of the campaign, you have to give it to a charity. Not reporting the contributor's occupation. Again, we talked about it, but that happens all the time. Not balancing on finance reports. If you say that you raised $500 and you say you spent $1,000, that's a problem. You cannot spend more money than you raise. You can loan yourself an extra $500 to cover that expense, but it must go through the campaign account. And then not properly reporting in-kind contributions. Someone says you're putting up signs, you're going to put up 50 signs on different locations throughout the county, and someone says, hey, I got a bunch of 2x4s here, you can have them. That's fine. Got to report it. And then I think that was the last slide, and I know we're going to do questions after the next presentation, so you can ignore this for now.
Thank you, Scott. So we will now move on to David Ferry and his presentation. David?
Hi, thanks. I didn't put these in slides because it's a little dry. So plus I figured I'm an interesting guy to listen to for a minute. I do love the sound of my own voice. That's why I was a candidate. So we'll have fun. All right, so I'm going to talk about organizing a campaign staff, talk about fundraising and record keeping. So, a lot, and I appreciate Scott's presentation because a lot of, the points I was worried about making, he's hammered very well. I will emphasize that, as was noted before, depending on the office you are running for, there are, some minor differences, but also some very stark differences in timing and costs and what is required and when it is required. So just as a quick contrast, like when the campaign that I ran, we submitted everything to the Division of Elections Tallahassee. So we had to, a lot of candidates running for state offices, actually travel up to Tallahassee and like hand in the filings, very similar filings at the time. but there's kind of a apprehension about not getting stuff there on time. So okay, so if you take anything else away from what I say over the next 15 minutes, and I forgot to start my timer, so I'll do that so I don't go too far over, is this. Time, in a candidate's time, is the only non-renewable resource that you have in a campaign. You can raise more money, you can do a lot more, you can get more of almost everything, but you cannot get more time. And creating a plan, and I'll try to be generic and not say there is one right way to do it, because there isn't, for sure. But creating that plan of how to maximize the candidate time is perhaps the most singularly crucial thing that you'll do in organizing a campaign. And a lot of that obviously centers around how you organize your campaign staff. So again, I will say there is no right or wrong way to do it. It's part of the reason I kind of didn't want to put it, to bullet it out as if there is this rote systematic way to organize a campaign. There's a lot of similarities. Obviously, there are thousands of campaigns that are run year after year after year, and all do very, very, very similar things because it does work. But again, it's going to depend on how much you raise, how much you're willing to loan, the office you're running for, the needs of that office, how you plan to win, what you as a candidate want to say, and how you want to organize yourself. It is incredibly easy to get, as a candidate, to be lost in the details. Again, as I love this kind of section notes, there is so much to do, and you can spend as little or as much time doing everything else, but doing the candidate work and the work that only they can do. The candidate needs to be out talking to voters, talking to donors, creating those, obviously bringing the plan to fruition. Those are things nobody else on your staff can do or should do because that's why you're a candidate. But at the same time, there is the reporting, there is the data, there's the analytics, there's the messaging, there's the communications. All of that is very easy to fall into, and you're going to want to do a lot of it. So getting good staff and in smaller campaigns is going to be volunteers or some part-time folks. So I'm going to talk about kind of again, generically how campaigns are organized. Again, specifics, just are going to depend on the situation at hand. But then also, kind of few words of caution and, kind of maybe some resources that you could potentially look at. Because again, unless we're talking about big campaigns, people, staffs cost money, professional staff money. So, but there are, a lot of resources out there that aren't don't cost anything in terms of, they volunteers, or, it's relatively inexpensive in comparison. So everybody's kind of familiar. We've seen on TV, we've seen in movies and TV shows. There are, we've got, the campaign managers, and we got all these different offices, and it really kind of boils down to this. Probably the first position, you look for is a treasurer. As Scott noted, and I won't repeat too much. They are the ones who are holding the purse strings and submitting the reports. That is the statutorily required things that your campaign needs to do are first order problems. So finding a good treasurer and the resources for that, if you are running with a party, usually parties can recommend someone, but finding someone who is there before is absolutely essential. And also that is a role that, again, if you do choose to fill it as a candidate for any period of time, it can take a lot of time. There is a learning curve there, particularly complicated, but it does take time to kind of get in the clip of doing those reports and collecting the data and making sure that you have everything. And again, all the time you're spending there, you are not spending time talking to voters, working on your messaging, outreach, all those kind of things you're not doing. So typically treasurer might be first. But in a typically organized campaign, you have a candidate, and you have a campaign manager, and your campaign manager is your like chief app. They are running, you're spending most of your time talking to your campaign manager. And under a campaign manager, there's typically, again, for smaller campaigns, there's typically kind of 3 offices. There's the treasurer, who's handling those reports. There is finance, which is in charge of donor research, call time, and making sure that the campaign's budget has the finances it needs in order to meet that. And they're the ones telling you, hey, we need to raise more, we need to reach out to this, here's the plan to do that. Or they're the ones saying, hey, you gotta loan your campaign more money. And field, which, kind of field breaks down to voter outreach. So they're doing, the voter targeting. They're doing, who to target for what purpose, you need to in the particular cycle of your campaign. And, they're in charge of canvassing. They're in charge of getting those volunteers. Now, in bigger campaigns, you have a political arm who, a lot of that is geared in a primary for, kind of building inroads with particularly stakeholders, kind of within a party. Big campaigns have political arm the entire time, because again, there's just a lot of coalition building that you need to do. Most, the campaigns that are, on the kind of county level don't particularly need that, probably, but again, it just kind of depends on what you need. You're going to want, it's the most effective use of your time and money is going to be, digital advertising and, not having paid media, and working with, trying to get interviews with newspapers, showing up at places, get your face on TV if you can. But, with, social media and all those things, I know it's going to be covered later, so I'm not going to speak too much to that. It's just to say, maximizing that. But again, you can get lost in it. You can get lost in creating the number of posts and the number of messages, the number of this, the number of that, and you're not doing what you should be doing. So with that, kind of a quick word of caution is consultants. There are some great campaign consultants out there, but there are also, as a candidate, what you will find is you will be inundated with outreach, sales pitches from consultants that consult on anything and everything, from strategy to communications to digital to voter outreach to canvassing to, you name it. There is a consultant who will gladly take your money to tell you a lot of what you already know. Now, like I said, there are also great consultants out there who are invaluable, and they could charge you double and it would be worth every penny. Now, that's a really difficult dichotomy to kind of parse. And I would just say, I say it as a word of caution because there are a lot of kind of second, third rate consultants out there that just hang a shingle, and they're not really adding value to your campaign. So again, that should be a campaign manager kind of thing. If and I highly, highly recommend getting some kind of campaign manager in short order, because then it is a relief of your time, because you need to spend the time, again, whether it's on call time with donors, whether it's canvassing and knocking doors, or going to community events, be seen and speaking and being out there and getting your message out, is where you're going to find greatest value. Just super quick, on fundraising, again, you have to be careful on who you're fundraising from, how much they're donating, those limits, and making sure people stay within the cycle limits. Again, good staff is going to help kind of cordon that off so you don't have to spend, as a candidate, too much time thinking about that. Again, not everyone not everyone can contribute to everything all the time. The last thing I'll say is, typically kind of in a campaign cycle, you target your voters, and, there's this, it's a very traditional of you're in your kind of cycle of persuasion, and then you're in your get out the vote, GOTV. Personally, and this is the gospel according to David, I think the distinction is BS. We should, I think, like sometimes we just first things up too much. We should always be trying to get out. In my opinion, this campaign should always be trying to get out the vote. We should always be trying to persuade. It's kind of one and the same thing. So, and the last say, because I know I'm over time, is that, with petitions versus paying the fee, you got to make the call there. I will say, regardless if you're planning to pay the fee, it's always a great idea to, again, have, if it's, just you, if you have volunteers, whatever, getting those, signatures on those, petitions, because that's somebody kind of signing up. They're much more likely, to be a great, potential pool of volunteers, because again, they're kind of committed to your campaign. So don't ignore it simply because you plan on doing it. It's worth the effort to do, even if you don't submit the petitions. It's just, and again, another good way. It's memorable, for your campaign. So anyway, sorry I talked too long.
No problem. Thank you, Scott and David, for your excellent presentations. Do we have some questions, Cheryl?
Yes, we do. We have some really wonderful questions. And Karen, you asked the first question, Karen Curlin. Can you unmute yourself and ask the question that you put in chat, please?
Thank you. Yes, Karen Corlin with Indivisible Manatee, and I am aware of times that donors have, if you go back into the campaign records, have made multiple donations of $1,000 over the months of a campaign under different related names, all from the same address. I mean, I'm not talking husband, wife, that kind of thing. I'm talking business names that are slightly different. Developers are famous for this. And is the candidate liable for not catching this, that they may all be from the same address, or does the SOE pick up on this? Is there any penalty for anybody when this happens?
So going to the requirement or the law is that you can only receive $1,000 per person per election. The per person has been deemed to be an entity. So for instance, if you and your husband own a business, you can give $1,000, your husband can give $1,000, and if that business is incorporated, it is considered a separate entity. That business can give $1,000. So that is perfectly legal and allowed. What would not be allowed is using a different name and being the same person. Now, whose responsibility is it to pick up on that? It's as a candidate, if they give you totally different names and different, even if it's the same address, if you get, it would probably, if you didn't know that it was the same person, it would not be necessarily your responsibility. But if you know that it's the same person, and again, going back to the idea that a person is not really a person, it's an entity, and you can have people that own multiple companies and multiple names, and as long as they're incorporated separately, each one of those is a separate entity. And I know some of you are probably saying, I don't like that, and that's fine. You don't have to like it. I'm just kind of trying to explain what the statute is. The other part of that is it's once per election. So if you have a primary, that person can give you $1,000 in that primary. And then if you move on to the general, they can give you another $1,000 to run in the general. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Miller, I don't see you on my screen. So Randy Miller, are you with us? Please unmute yourself. All right, I'll skip that question. Phyllis, thank you for raising your hand. Would you like to ask a question, please?
Yeah, I have two that I think will be quick. For par races, is there now a period of time that you must be registered in the party for which you're running?
Yes, there is. You must be if you're going to in a partisan race, you must be registered in the party you plan on running for at least 365 days, 1 year prior to the start of qualifying. Start of qualifying is June. So if you wanted to change your party, it's too late for this election.
Okay. And then another thing that maybe I misunderstood, but you said there was a filing period and that somebody could file up to 2 weeks in advance. Well, what are some of these names that are appearing on the SOE site as running for an office now?
So what is on our website are candidates that have filed. They've given those first two pieces of paper to us. They've said it's basically they're giving us the intent to be a candidate. And they've told us who their bank is and who their treasurer. That's who's on our website right now. The 2-week period is for qualifying. There is a 1-week period of
Okay.
qualifying, but the law allows us basically for you to turn in your qualifying paperwork 2 weeks early and us to hold it for you. Like if you're going to go out of town or you're just really worried about missing the deadline, so you want to give it to us early, you can legally do it up to 2 weeks before the start of qualifying. But what you're seeing on our website are those candidates who have filed.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Scott. Mary Foreman, you have your hand raised. Would you like to ask your question?
Unmute.
Unmute yourself, please, Mary. Okay.
I got it. Okay. David, could you talk about when you go to set up a bank account, banks are going to want a federal ID number, a tax ID number. Could you talk about that for, what's, because you don't want to end up having the IRS expect a tax return out of your campaign at the end. So.
Yeah, you can. I'm trying to remember now because the setup was. Yeah, you can. You set up. There is a political entity that you can set up through the, like to get a federal, ID number, and you do need that, to file your, to open your bank account, especially. You don't really use it any other time, and as long as you're doing qualified income and expense work, there's not any federal tax implication with that. You're not generating income in your camp, and you can do it all. If I believe you can do it on the IRS website and get your number the same day, if I recall. That's what it did. But it's like I think that it's like a POL organization or something like that. But it's relatively uncomplicated, and then the IRS sends you out a letter, and you've got that kind of a form. I will say, I talked to Price Waterhouse about, because I just I just want to make sure I don't have any tax to worry about here, and they were they'll again, you want to talk about consultants that'll charge you. They said we'll happily charge you $10,000 to do all the your insurance in the world. I said no, thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Susan, excuse me, let's go with Alice. Alice, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. And this is for Scott. When you turn in those petitions, you're charging 10 cents a piece to validate the signature. How many, somebody can be putting Donald Duck on those things. A lot of times you collect them for that many signatures. You're collecting them from people you don't know. How many signatures would you suggest that you get in excess of the required amount? What's the percentage you usually see lost? And does anybody ever challenge the signatures that you've said are okay?
So it's a good question, and it kind of depends. It depends on where you get your signatures from. If you focus on if you're running for a party as a partisan candidate and you're getting most of your signatures through the party organizations you're going to and things like that, usually 10% is what we see that we can't accept. And most of those are generally, they forgot to put their birth date or something on it that is required. If you're you need a lot of petitions, and say you need 2,700 petitions, and so you're getting most of those by going to the fair. That's a very popular one. I actually was at the fair and I saw a couple of people collecting petitions. You don't really know who those people are, so it's usually closer to 25% of those petitions are not going to be good, because people will just be like, yeah, I'll sign it, and they either scribble so badly you can't read it, they make up a name, or they're not even really registered to vote. So the other thing I will say is, if you need, even if you only need 500 petitions, don't wait until you've gotten all 500 petitions to give them to us. If you give them in batches of a couple hundred at a time, we will verify them. We'll tell you how many more you need, and it'll be a little easier on both of us. We don't have to rush to try and get your petitions done, and you'll kind of know where you're at.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Susan Augrusso. Susan?
Hi, my question I think is for Scott. Can you talk a little bit about loaning money to your campaign? Is there a specific process for that, or do you just note it on the financial reports?
There's no real official process. You basically, of course, you've already opened your campaign account, so you have a separate account. You just, from your personal funds, write a check into the campaign, and then on your report, when you are entering that contribution, you mark it as a loan. And then the system knows that there are no limits on it. And the other advantage to doing a loan, sometimes candidates will do a bunch of in-kind for themselves. Like, I need paper. I just went and bought it and gave myself paper. I need stamps. I went and bought $100 in stamps and just gave it to the campaign. Totally fine. But one of the advantages to a loan, at the end of the campaign, if there's any money left over, you can pay yourself back first. If you've loaned your campaign $5,000 and you've got $10,000 left at the end, you can take the first $5,000, give it to repay yourself that loan. If you've given yourself $1,000 in stamps and paper and cups and all of that kind of stuff, you'd be surprised how quickly that adds up. You cannot repay yourself for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna have one last question and then it'll be time for a break. Costin, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This goes to Scott. Now, I was looking online about the petition method, and I know that a lot of people are from out of town, come down here as snowbirds. If you have to pay that 10% of the verification fee, if that person does not reside in the state of Florida, will that person still be put on, that person that's running for a candidate, will that affect that person's been put on that ballot? Still?
So in order for a petition to be valid, you must be a registered voter in the district in which you're running. So if you're running for a countywide, they must be a registered voter in Manatee County. Normally, if you're running for, say, County Commission District 4, they have to be a registered voter in Manatee County and County Commission District 4. Because this is a redistricting year, there's an exception in that, but they still have to be a registered voter in Manatee County. So if you need to get 600 petitions verified, they have to, and you give us 700 of them, and 100 of them don't live in Manatee County, we're not going to accept those. That's why Alice earlier was asking, how many extra should you plan on getting? Because some of them aren't going to be acceptable. So, but to answer your first question, you still have to pay 10 cents, whether it's a good petition or a bad petition, you have to pay 10 cents for that petition.
Thank you. Thank you all, gentlemen. And I'll turn it back over to you, Alice.
Thank you. And thank you for a very informative and excellent presentation. We've learned a lot and probably saved some money for some of the candidates. It's now time for our 10-minute breakout rooms and additional getting to know others and discussion. To get the conversations moving, please share with others in your group what you found the most useful in the multitude of task presentations. And we will see you back here in 10 minutes for the presentation on press relations, strategies, and social media. Back. Welcome back. I hope the break energized you. You got to know and a few additional people, and you're ready for our next segment, which is press relations, strategies, and social media. What should your strategy be to convey a winning message? How can you get publicity that you want and need? How do you reach the right audience? Get your name out there and your message to them. Doing this well can be daunting, but it is necessary. We have two speakers who have the experience to help answer these questions for you. Ryan Callahan, the county reporter for the Bradenton Herald, and Cesar Garcia, Jr., AKA CJ, President of Alpha Fortius Consultants, a local business consulting and marketing agency. They're going to put their contact information in chat. Ryan Callahan has been with the Bradenton Herald newspaper since 2017. Since that time, he has covered elections and campaigns at the local, state, and federal level. Ryan says he sits through government meetings so that you don't have to. But as you know, the league has been observing the Board of County Commissioner meetings, and we always see Ryan there, tall and lanky, jotting away for the entire meeting. And then shortly thereafter, an article pops up on a newsworthy item. Many times there's an amazing amount of additional detail, background information. Ryan will be informing us on press relations. Cesar Garcia is a native Manatee County resident, born right here at Manatee Memorial Hospital. CJ has been involved in community service projects with numerous organizations and has a passion for community involvement since he was a child. Growing up in a home with 2 immigrant parents, he was inspired to help better his community by doing community outreach. CJ owns Alpha Fortius Consultants, Inc., and helps his fiancee, Nancy, run her food business, El Indio Mexican Cuisine, in Bradenton, Florida. CJ and Nancy have 3 children, ages 7, 9, and 5 months. CJ enjoys spending time with his family and hosting Tampa Bay Buccaneers tailgate parties with family and friends. Ryan?
Well, that was a wonderful intro. I appreciate it. Hey guys. I see some familiar faces in here, and also some new people. Hello, Commissioner. And Kurt. I know Kurt. Ruth. So I'm just gonna kind of keep it informal and just kind of chat with you guys about tips to be in the newspaper. So I suppose that I'm a lot like many of you on this call right now. I always wanted to be a journalist. I didn't intend to write about politics. My boss just kind of said, this is what you're doing now. And that's how I got here. And I feel, I guess many of you probably never thought you'd be running for office or interested in it. But here you are. So I guess I've got, sorry, this is my cat here. I've got 3 sections that I want to talk about. I guess I'll start with how to get into the paper. So basically, I mean, it's usually as simple as reaching out to the person who's writing about the office you want to run for. So obviously, don't send your press release to the real estate reporter if you're running for a city council. I mean, if you're running for office, you're probably following the meetings. You're reading not just the Bradenton Herald, hopefully the Sarasota Herald Tribune, the Observer, the Bradenton Times. You should be familiar with the bylines of those reporters and send them all your press release. When in doubt, send it to other people as well. I mean, get a hold of the editor, call someone. Being annoying works when it's time to get in front of the media. We may seem like we're hard to get a hold of, but you keep trying and eventually someone's going to pick up the phone and ask what's going on. Let's see. In terms of sending your press release, do so, but also keep in mind that we might not write about your campaign as soon as you file, and that's okay. We want to be aware that you're in the race. We want to keep track of your race. If you've got like a newsletter or something like that that, you know, talks about what you're doing out in the community, highlights the ideas you have for if you get elected, you know, you don't even have to ask, put me on that list, put other reporters on that list. We want to be aware of what you've got going on. So in terms of relationships with reporters, you've got to understand our role, right? Like we're here to basically hold you accountable, introduce you to the public. So you got to kind of work with us, right? You got to provide the information. You got to be willing to, you know, answer sometimes tough questions. They might seem a little basic, kind of, you know, it's always interesting to ask someone what they do for a living, how old they are. But these are the basics that we don't know that we're trying to explain to the public, right? Like sometimes there's candidates who enter the race and I know them already, but I've still got to ask those questions. So you just gotta work with us a little bit there. And in terms of answering those questions, be as specific as possible, and also be prepared for the questions that you know are coming. If I ask you why you decided to run for city council or county commission, please don't shrug, you know, or say that, you know, the seat was open, so why not? Rehearsing those answers it really does go a long way. Let's see here. I mean, and don't be afraid to share, I guess, is another piece of advice. You might tell me that your favorite color is orange, and that might make it into the paper, it might not. But the more you share, the better. Being as open, as transparent as possible is always a good thing when it comes to my job. And then, let's see here. I'll quickly touch on going off the record. A lot of people have questions about that. Off the record should be used extremely rarely, right? It's usually a way for you to share some dirt without attaching your name to it, but I would always prefer you to attach your name to it. So keep that in mind. And also when we are considering going off the record, it's an agreement between both of us, right? You can't just say, we're going off the record now. I kind of have to, you need my permission before you can say something like that. And do so sparingly. I'm sure there's going to be questions about that a little bit later. Let's see here. Mistakes and success, right? So basically you should start off when you file your campaign, you should have a press release ready to go. A press release with a detailed bio that answers many of the basic questions that both voters and reporters are going to have. We want to know what you've got in mind for the office you're running for, what experience you have that makes you a qualified candidate for that position, where you went to school, you know, how long you've lived in Manatee County, all sorts of things. And then that press release needs to come with some contact information for you. And also, it's always best to make yourself as available as possible. My best relationships with politicians are the politicians and candidates that answer the phone and get back to me. There are candidates and politicians who answer the phone every time. There are candidates and politicians who never answer the phone. And I'll let you guys guess which ones I have a better relationship with, right? I've got deadlines to hit, and I know y'all are busy, but making time for journalists and reporters should really be key for you guys. Now, in terms of that press release, keep in mind that I'm going to dig past it, right? You can provide the basics, but I'm going to try to find more. And if you've got skeletons in your closet, you should be aware of those, because either I'm going to find them or your opponent's going to find them, and they're going to call me and tell me about them, right? So like, if for some reason you're a convicted felon, be ready to answer questions about being a convicted felon. Or if you lied about getting your degree from, Harvard, someone's going to find that out and I've got to ask you about it. Now that's not always going to break your campaign, obviously. I mean, you can have a prepared answer, but those are things that I'm going to ask about. I mean, if you're running for office, and that's fine, but you've got a DUI, you should be prepared to, address that. Let's see. I think I'm pretty close to wrapping up here, but the last thing I've got to say is that, journalists aren't perfect. Sometimes we make mistakes when we're writing about you guys. And that could be as simple as writing that you went to UF instead of USF. But you can always reach out to us for a correction and that sort of thing. Like, don't think that we are too good to be corrected. I am certainly not. And I think that's about it. I don't know if we want to do questions after CJ or.
We will be doing questions after CJ, so thank you.
Wonderful.
I'm sure there will be many questions for you.
I
So
got it.
CJ, it's all you now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Alice. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I know that right now with everything that's going on in the world, this is probably the safest way to do it. And I'm looking forward to a time when we could enjoy the things that, we usually do. But for right now, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Ryan. I kind of want to start off by piggybacking off of him. Honesty, integrity is important in this, and a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking that people just know, or they make a lot of assumptions. Communication is of utmost important. If there's something that's out there, like Ryan was saying, as a candidate, let me tell you, you need to let them know and say, hey, look, these were the circumstances, whether they believe you or not. Honesty, integrity is number one, and I can start off with that. But I want to start off reading a small snippet. I have my little Bible here. Chris Matthews' Hardball, How Politics is Played. I read this when I was in high school still, and I fell in love with it. Now, I may or may not agree with all of his politics, but the dude wrote a pretty solid book. And there's a chapter here, chapter 2, and the quote is from Tip O'Neill, who I'm sure many of you remember as a very strong Speaker of the House way back in his day. It says, members are going to come in to see you with some matter that you will think is the craziest thing you ever heard. Just remember, it is very important to that member. Otherwise, he would never have come in with it. All politics is local. That is number one. And I believe kind of similar to what Ryan was saying, messaging. You have to know what your message is before you do anything. A lot of people, when they decide to run for office, when they decide to throw their hat in the ring, I would assume, but again, what did I say about assuming? That you kind of know what that entails, what the job description is, but be very educated in what it is you're running for, what it means, and everything that would be expected of you. That's an important step. But then I think it's important as to why. Ryan said, don't shrug me off, why did you run for office? Well, that's very true. You have to have a message that's on point. You have to have something that's cohesive and something you believe in. If you're running because I just don't like such and such and so, I mean, well, that's great. You have your right to do that, but you're not going to get very far, because you have to have something. And I believe keep it local, keep it local. There's a reason why we have local journalists on here. And we're not trying to do a panel on CNN because it's here. It's about Manatee County. It's about Bradenton. It's about, whether or not you agree with development. It's about, a whole range of issues and that I think are important for, as a candidate, for you to know, and some people that comes very naturally. They know exactly, what the issues are. They know what they disagree with. My opponent voted this, that, and that, and I would have voted differently, and that's great. But educate yourself and know your opponent. Know who you're running against. That's important too. Right now we live in an age of technology where there's a lot of opposition research that's done, and everything is out there. It's, there's no reason to hide, it's just make sure that what's out there, and yourself. That's extremely important. I have a very good friend who's in the state Senate, and he starts off his speeches every single time. I came from, a wrecked home, and I was a delinquent when I was young, and I did all of these things. And he I like his style because he puts all his skeletons out for you to hear them coming directly from him. And then he goes, but look at where I'm at now. He's a esteemed attorney, and he's done many great things. So, there's nothing wrong with being open. I think that's extremely good. Branding. I run a business, right? And most of my business is helping other, small businesses in Manatee, Sarasota, the Tampa Bay area, because I have some clients as far south as Fort Myers. And the number one thing that I believe about a political campaign, now I would like to make a quick note here for everybody. Running for office is very different than governing. And we have some people on here who are elected officials. I see you, Misty. I see Pam and other people. I think you guys can agree to that. Running for office and governing are two completely separate things. And that is very important. I've seen here locally recently where someone ran for office and won, and then they kept running for office. And it's like there was no off switch, and you just keep going. It's like, okay, all right, you won. We get it. Now, where's the governing? But they act like if they're still, it's the same talking points. It doesn't make any sense. You're in office, do your job, and that's something very extremely important to understand. People like the thrill. I say there's no such thing as a humble politician. And why? You gotta have a lot of pride to come to me and say, I'm the best person, vote for me. And there is no humble way to say that. So, those are things that we have to know of ourselves and of, politicians. And I think they're important. But branding is important because, you're branding yourself. It's your name, but also do some research. The color schemes and the fonts and whether people will read it are extremely important when you come to do this. And that brings you into messaging. Here's some 4 key things that you need in messaging. Number 1, keep it simple. Keep it simple. There's a reason why newspapers are at an average of 4th, 5th grade reading level, because the average population, that's the reading level of the populace. Know your audience. So, it's great if you have a platform and you have talking points, but make sure you understand that if you can't tell my 7-year-old son and he can't understand what you just said, most people won't. And that's just the truth. Now, we have this bubble that we put ourselves in sometimes. And this is something that as a professional, I actively try to remind myself. We're surrounded by very educated, smart, sophisticated people. Not to say that not everybody is, but sometimes we get in this bubble where we think everybody can understand us. And that's not the case. I've seen Facebook candidates that the same 30 likes, the same 30 people say, yeah, you're going to win. And they get themselves into this bubble of thinking, oh, this is in the bag. And then you go out on election day, all you did was win a Facebook campaign and you get your butt handed to you by 40, 50 points. So, these are all things we have to be self-aware. Websites and blogs are great. If you are a verbose, an eloquent person who loves to hear the sound of your voice, do a podcast. If you love to write, put it on a blog. People will read it. The educated voters, they will read it. The people who vote in the primaries, who vote early, vote early and vote often, they will read it and they will know who you are. But, it's very important to make sure that the general population understands what it is you stand for and what it is you're running for. So keeping it simple is important. Websites are important. And the reason they're important, honestly, is people use them now for raising money. And I know that there's a lot of other ways that, there is to raise money, but websites are a great platform to just share a link and get people to, do it, whether they're out of state, their family, friends, or whatever. They're important to put your platform on. Which brings me to point number 2. Once you realize that you got to keep it simple, Keep your platform small. You know, yes, you believe in a lot of things, but 3 or 4 important things that you really want to get accomplished while you're in office, and to relay that to the population is extremely important, because it's only 4 years, depending on what office you're going for. It's 2 years if you're running for like a state house seat, you know, those are every 2 years. So it's important to understand what the realities are. You know, you can't go in there and say, I'm going to change all these laws and everything. And then, because what's going to happen is someone like Ryan is going to come after 4 years or after 2 years and say, hey, remember when you said all of this, what happened? And you know, that's one of those things where we have to be very cognizant, because just because you won doesn't mean you don't have to run again, unless you're just going to do a one and done. But that also doesn't mean you're not going to be subject to scrutiny based on what you ran on. If you ran on a platform of environmental protections and you do nothing regarding environmental protection, expect to get some heat. Expect for people to question, well, then where is this hoopla you were talking about? Furthermore, I think we have a very minimal understanding at a very average level of what the digital world is, because politics has changed. The way that you run a campaign 10 years ago to now, night and day. It's not the same. Campaign signs are important, yeah. And honestly, and I'm just going to be honest, you know, if I was your consultant, this is free advice here that I'm giving. I would tell you, you know, just buy enough so that your supporters feel like they're doing something. You know why? Because yes, it's important, but it's more for your supporters to feel like, you know what, I support this candidate. I'm going to put this in my yard, or I'm going to put this on my business. Because what's going to be really important is those 100 people that have your yard signs, it's their job to go and tell others. It's their job. So there's a structure to this. But, you know, and billboards and stuff I've seen but digital media right now is where it's at. It's branding, it's name recognition, it's people knowing who you are. Sometimes people will vote for you, and let's just be honest, there's a science to this, you know, based on where you're placed on the ballot. You'll get a certain percent uptick if just alphabetically you're first. You know, there are things that just are, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people who just didn't hear about you, and they're going to make a random guess. And that's something that's okay. But you got to do your best to try to touch as many people as possible. So there's a difference between social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, those platforms, and then digital media. Digital media is where you can run an ad on the e-articles of the Bradenton Herald or the Bradenton Times, or there's social media where you run ads on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. You know, I suggest hire someone, and I'm not putting myself out there as a bid. You know, I'm just saying get somebody who really understands it, because I've seen as of recent, especially here in Manatee County, people who run a good digital and social media campaign do extremely well. Especially when you look at changing dynamics, especially when you look at the changing age of the populace. How are you going to get that millennial? How are you going to get that Gen Xer? How are you going to speak to them in their language, something they're going to understand? Because it's very possible that millennial that's in their 20s and 30s, you know, late 20s, 30s, early 40s, that's busy with their career and stuff, they're concerned about something completely different than when that 18, 19-year-old just out of high school starting community colleges. And again, this goes back to know your audience, know what your message is. So I even still to this day am learning how all of this works. But suffice enough to say that all of this is an extremely important core part of your campaign. Something that hasn't been talked about as much is the grassroots stuff, which is a whole other conversation. Right now with COVID, that's been very kind of hit or miss, you know, with the social distancing, the face masks, the virus running rampant. But if this was a normal election cycle or over the last couple cycles, you're talking about a huge grassroots effort that when it comes to local politics, it matters. And I'll finish with this, because I mean, I could go on for hours about this stuff, but I'm hoping that I'm giving you guys just enough to understand that when you're talking about digital, social media, the internet, communications, you know, all of these things that are extremely important, because this is what the voter is going to know about you and remember about you. It's good to know that, you know, you got to pick your team wisely and have some experience. And I'll finish with this. there's a power of influence. And I'm speaking, I think, more to the elected officials here, or the people who want to run for office. There's a power of influence that I think is extremely ignored at a local level. I'm the kind of guy that I'm going to go to that one barber on the corner that everybody in the community knows. And I'm going to talk with them and say, hey, you know what? You know, such and such is running for office, a great person. This is what they believe in. Have a conversation. And then if that's the case, then the candidate can meet with them and say, you know what, this is me, this is what I do. Spread the word locally. There are local movers and shakers, influencers in neighborhoods and communities that you can pinpoint and target. And I'm not saying coerce them. I'm not saying bribe them, because all of that is illegal. I'm just saying present yourself and see if you can convince them, because some of you guys don't even know them. Like I've gone to the same barber for 15 years. We talk about everything. I've gone through his mother being, you know, when she passed away, when my grandfather passed away. We've had a lot of moments together. So I want you guys to also think about the circle of influence around you, you know, and how you can spread your word and use that also to help you out. Because they have Facebook, they have Instagram, they have social media, they can share your links, they can email, they can do all kinds of stuff. So, you know, campaigning is a lot. Social media, digital media is a lot. But I think, you know, this is just enough for you guys to try to understand the scope of everything that's entailed when you're talking about using the internet as a strong just angle for you to use for your campaign and the process that it takes. You know, I'm sure there's going to be questions for Ryan. My stuff is just more, you know, I have, you know, he's the interesting guy over here, you know, but, you know, if you guys, I'll leave it to you, Alice, because if you don't stop me, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
I'm a run-on sentence.
I appreciate your energy, CJ, and your humility. Mary Lynn, do we have questions for Ryan and CJ?
Actually, it's Felicia. I'm on for.
Oh,
Ryan.
I'm sorry. Mary Lynn's the next one. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. So if we have questions for Ryan and CJ, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, and hopefully I can keep the order in place. And then if there are no questions, if you don't want to raise your hands, we'll go to chat. So I see that Mary Lynn has a question. If you can unmute yourself, Mary Lynn.
I just found CJ's comments about breaking out of your bubble really powerful. And I'm wondering from both CJ and Ryan, how does a candidate find those community influencers to whom they need to present themselves to start that web and wave of knowing the candidate?
I would defer to CJ, but I think that kind of message spreading is pretty organic. I mean, a candidate, in my eyes, should be going door to door and meeting with community leaders and things like that. And once you hit the right person, I feel like it's kind of like lighting a spark, and then, you know, suddenly you've got a fire going. But if CJ has more to add, then by all means.
I just think thank you for that. I appreciate the comment. I think it's also important to realize that when it comes down to picking your team and who you work with, you know, you want to start with your immediate circle. You know, who's your dentist, who's your barber, who's your doctor, who's the pediatrician. And you can start having those conversations from there. Eventually, like he says, you'll get to those people out in the community. And then you can start having those conversations that are very organic, and you just spread your message from there. You know, not all of them are going to agree with you. I'll tell you that right now. You know, they're just going to be people that, you know, as a business owner, I've met all kinds of personalities across the spectrum. And, you know, the one thing we agree on is business. Outside of that, our politics are left and right, and, you know, blue and middle and whatever you want to call them. So, you know, just realize also that, you know, just because you're running for office and you have a, you know, title and a little sticker doesn't also mean that they have to listen to you. And that's okay. Because I've seen sometimes where people are very disappointed because, you know, oh, well, I'm running for office. Nobody wants to talk to me. Well, you know, just keep trying, you know, don't give up. but also it's very good to be cognizant of all these roadblocks that you will face as you do these things.
Okay, thank you. Kurt, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. Question for CJ. I met with another consultant who is quite familiar with Manatee County and Bradenton politics, and on the media mix, he told me to budget mostly for direct mail and some for yard signs, did not talk much at all about social media, although to make it part of the mix, but he really hammered away on raising a lot of money for multiple postcards to send out to folks. Opinion?
I mean, we all kind of work differently. And, you know, I would agree with him, in fact, and to say that mailers are important because it gives you direct access, something that's, you know, in their face, you know, they get it in their person. You know, it's similar to a door hanger going canvassing. And in the age of COVID, extremely important because there's a issue with the canvassing and the door knocking and stuff. So to be respectful, I would agree. As it stands right now, I would agree with that. But I also think that we have to put it, I'm a future thinker, you know, I like to think in the future. And I also like to think about the fruit that nobody goes after, right? So if you're in a very tight and competitive race, you can run analytics and see what, you know, what you can get just based on name recognition. You can run a small poll, even though like in these local races, I wouldn't suggest it because it's not as worth it because it's very hard to get a good sample. However, I would say that if you're running a tight race, and it's happened before, you know, a few years ago, what you do is you target the people that may not get out to vote. And how do you get to them? And that's why these younger voters, where sometimes if you look at the statistics, young voters don't vote. Just like Latinos, it's 10% maybe, and you're lucky. You know, so if you really want to try to reach the most amount of people, I think that's important too, to consider. Again, know your audience and messaging. But I'm just, I'm not a huge paper guy. You know, I think, you know, and that again, that's just a difference of opinions. You know, people will have different opinions, but I believe, you know, and no offense, Ryan, because I know the print industry is hurting. I am, you know, a paid subscriber, you know, but it is shifting. And I think it's important to realize that, you know, between now and 10 years, you know, I think, you know, paper mail is going to be, you know, but as it stands today, I would agree with that. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. Alice, I see your hand raised.
Yeah. Kind of going between two questions, because that target audience, you know, sort of triggered something, but I am going to go back to CJ about your data collection. So you're going to have a certain number of contacts for different reasons. What have you seen done that's been very effective in terms of keeping the contacts, the people you want, and being able to draw on them quickly for the needs you have, and also the data that you use to determine, you know, who are your constant voters and who are the ones that occasionally vote that you might want to target. So if you could address the data.
Sure. Right here, I'm going to get a chance to give a kudos to Mike's office over there and Scott and everybody that works over there. They do an extremely good job at providing information when you request it. They're very efficient and they work quickly. So the way this works is you get data from the Supervisor of Elections, and you can send them, you know, I need, you know, this population, this zip code or whatever, and they'll provide it. There are, you know, laws in place, you know, to prevent certain information from getting out and stuff like that. But for the most part, you can get the data directly from them. There are also, obviously, the political parties have access to data and information and to, you know, to help with voter targeting and things like that. There are political committees. There's a whole bunch of ways, and there's an organic way to do it too. When you host an event, get people's emails, contact information, you keep it all together, right? So now the next thing is, what do you do? So in the new age today that we live in, data is the equivalent to cash is king. Data is king. The more data you have, the better analytics you can do, the better targeting you can have, and the more efficient you become. Which, when it comes to what Kurt was talking about, raising money, you know, sometimes it's hard to raise money and it's hard to spend money. You know, it hurts, you know, because, you know, you want to make sure that it's being efficient, it's not being wasted, that you're spending it in the correct places, you know, and that's why, you know, it's important to speak with your consultant or your team about that, you know. But I think the most effective thing that I've seen used with data is when you are able to group it based on either, you know, political ideology or leanings, or whether you can group it based on like ideas or concepts. So, you know, if there's a certain place, for example, geography, you know, out on the islands, it's going to be very important to them, the impact of red tide. You know, so if you can take the people in those zip codes and then target them and say, you know what, this is my red tide, or this is my environmental impact plan, and to be able to target them to something that interests them. Remember, this is not one cohesive thing. You know, this is where you can really start. And now I see one of the Carmens, or both of them on here, you know, they can agree with me. This is extremely important. You know, these are things that you want to be able to connect directly with your readers. So if I'm going to send an email, which, to be honest, and I don't mean offense to anyone, I don't really use too much or recommend, because the click rate is horrible and people just throw it away. You know, but something more direct, such as a text message. You know, if you have a good headline on it, something that can grab them and get their attention, you know, all of that is important. You want people to pay attention to you. And I think that's kind of what you were geared to, Alice. How can you get them to engage with you in your campaign? And honestly, that's sometimes that's just creativity. Sometimes you might have somebody on your canvassing team that just comes up with this bright idea and it clicks. You know, and, you know, because there's no like one end all, no one size fits all to this. It's really based on you, because everything has to come from the candidate. You know, that is one thing. You set the tone for your campaign. You know, so if you're a lively, sprightly personality, your campaign's going to be that way. But if you're strict and rigid, that's also how it's going to come off. You know, and also try not to be something that you're not. You know, just to please people. Don't pander, please. Please, people pick up on that. And I see Misty shaking her head. Please. Don't pander. I'm telling you right now, someone smart like Ryan, they're gonna pick up on it, and all they got to do is you're like, okay, so, and you know, it's kind of like when you're getting investigated by you know, a detective or something. Their job is to get the truth out, you know, and so they, you know, I would just say, be careful, you know, and how you use the data to make sure you have your permissions. Don't break the law. You know, make sure that you're cognizant of how you use it and what it's good for. I've dealt with companies sometimes that don't understand that there are campaign laws that are separate than consumer laws. And sometimes I have to have an attorney write them a letter and say, look, I can use this for that because this law and that. So, you know, and you know, just make sure that you guys are all aware. I think that's extremely important too. You want to protect data as much as possible because it's personal to people.
Great, thank you. Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, my question is for CJ relating to social media. I'm just wondering, I use Facebook as an organizer and I find it to be the worst social media platform for organizing events. And I started switching to emails only because they're more direct, but that's only like 15% of my whole group. And I thought about switching over to meetup.com, but then there's the cost of about $350 a year for the higher grade account. What's your suggestion for social media programs, platforms, and how to best use them? Which ones do you think are the best ones to use?
Okay, so I think you're speaking from an organizer standpoint, because I still do some work up there. I worked with the SEIU before and the People's Forum over there in Pinellas when I used to live there. So one of the things that that I found most effective, because what you're talking about is what I was referring to, engagement, getting people to engage with you, and then also to participate. Those are, now you're stretching it now. Engaging with you is easy. Getting them to participate is a whole, it's like, you know, if I were teaching a class on getting people to vote, we'd never finish. Because that's what you're talking about, getting them to participate. One thing is like, yeah, I'm gonna vote for you. And then you go to the voter records and it's like, you didn't vote. Oh, I forgot. I was working, or, it slipped my mind. So, getting them to participate. I think one of the things, and this is just a suggestion based on prior experience, I like to do direct campaigns, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text message with a survey, and you can use, like, there's Call Fire, there's Easy Text, there's very different amounts of programs for that. And then it's about the follow-up. I think that follow-up is important. It's the same thing when you're running a campaign, following up with the voter, like, okay, you said you would vote for me on this text message. Today's election day. Remember, go and vote for me. The same thing, and that constant engagement, because the people who are going to go to your event, they're going to go and they won't mind the constant engagement. You might be able to convince someone on the way, but then also, most importantly, then you can get all those opt-outs of people that are just like, stop bugging me, I don't care, and then you can find an alternative way to try to reach the people who just aren't interested. But I would say something more direct, such as a phone call, even, be careful with the robocalls. There's some laws on that with the FCC and whatnot. But I think maybe a direct text message campaign, which I am only going to assume is going to be regulated soon too, as far as what you can and can't do. But as it stands right now, it's pretty much a free-for-all. So, something more personal. And again, it's about your message. Something is going to get them to actually open the text message, read it, and then, all the way down to the ask. It's almost like when you're doing sales training. I hope that helps.
Great. Mary Lynn, I see your hand raised.
How much money does a candidate have to raise to run what would be a good campaign? Let's say for Board of County Commissioner. Okay, so that's a loaded question, and Ryan might be able to better educate you on the law and whether a corporation should count as a person or not. Dark money and PACs, super PACs, and political committees. I mean, to be honest, like a city council race of sorts, you are looking right now, as it stands, probably between 30 and 50,000, just because of the level of competitiveness, the amount of money that's being spent, and also the outside influence. For Board of County Commissioners, honestly, I'm thinking on the low end, 75 plus. And the only reason is because you're talking about the entire county and trying to, if you're running at large, but even if you're running just as, per your district, it's still a lot of people. And being able to effectively give messaging out is expensive. Text messages are expensive to send, mailers are expensive, printing, hiring staff, all of that, all those things, they count. But I would just like to put in there a caveat. There's a lot of outside influence also. So just because your campaign raised $75,000 doesn't mean that a political committee is not going to spend another $100 to help you. So, as far as what's in your bank account, that's one thing. What someone else is going to spend for or against you is a whole other thing for the legal room voters to host. But when you're talking about money, I would say between 75 plus. And I think that's me being very conservative with that number. And I know it sounds like a lot.
Yeah,
And Ryan, I see you shaking your head. Are you agreeing with that?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and echo exactly what he said. Those figures are exactly what I had in mind, and also conservative. I mean, last BOCC cycle, I don't think there was a race that wasn't a six-figure race. I mean, you got to be pulling in some serious cash.
Great. Well, thank you. One last question for this group. Costin, I see your hand raised. Am I pronouncing that right, Costin?
It's Costin.
Costin, sorry.
Yes, ma'am. My question is to Ryan. In regards to mass media at Bradenton Herald there, I noticed that there's been a transition. A lot of people no longer, go, buy newspapers, or if they go online, I went to the Bradenton Herald sites before, they have to pay a fee in order to, access some of the material that is posted. My question is, how impactful now, because it's a niche market that I take from the Bradenton Herald, how do you guys, that person's message, that candidate's message, how do you guys make that message broader to reach, more people if it's a niche market that you guys are reaching out to?
That's a good question. And I'd go back to my comments earlier. I mean, you kind of got to understand the role of the journalist is not to campaign for you. I think you should be budgeting to spread your message, but I do believe that the educated voters that want to stay informed about things that are going on, I think those people are people that are subscribing to the Bradenton Herald newspaper, and not just the Bradenton Herald. I mean, they're getting their news from all sorts of places. And I think probably CJ could, I see CJ nodding his head, and I think he could speak to that more. I mean, the people who are interested in what your campaign has to say, I believe are willing to pay that fee and you know, get the details from the Bradenton Herald newspaper and other news outlets.
Okay.
And to kind of piggyback off of Ryan and to give him some credit here on what he was saying earlier, I think it's also very important that you have a good relationship with your media, the reporters. You guys might not agree. You might not like how they write what you said. You know, that doesn't mean that you know, I've seen politicians make the mistake before. They cuss out the reporter or they say something negative and it gets back. They will find you think it's going to get any better. You know, so it's one of those things where I would encourage everyone to, you know, whether you agree with the owner or, you know, the publisher, the editor, whoever it is, really doesn't matter, because what you're trying to do is spread your message, and they will. It might not be how you'd like it, or maybe they won't write it how you want it, but at least you'll be able to push it, you know, and get it out there. And, you know, at the end of the day, there's other ways to also spread your message and what you want to say. But the educated reader and the people who will pay to subscribe, it's important that you get to them too, you know. And so I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, just one more comment. I think candidates should view the newspaper as one of their avenues, not the only avenue or the most important avenue, honestly.
Great, thank you. Great questions from the audience, and I'm going to turn it back over to Alice.
Thank you, Ryan and CJ. I love the contrast. Ryan's just so laid back and giving information. CJ is just a bundle of energy. So very well done. A lot of good information.
Thank you. I got to keep up with my 5-month-old and a 7 and a 9-year-old. So coffee at 6 a.m. it is.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So it's now time for our 10-minute breakout rooms. And at the question that you can share, or apparently there's a lot of different information passing around in the breakout rooms, is what's your takeaway from this press relations strategy social media segment? And we will see you back here for our office holder panel in 10 minutes. Welcome back. It's time for our office holder panel. We're very honored and pleased to have a panel of proven office winners from a variety of offices. And our panelists today are Misty Servia, Manatee County Commissioner for District 4, John Chappie, Mayor of Bradenton Beach, and also he has been commissioner before. Pam Coachman, Bradenton Councilwoman for Ward 5, and Mary Foreman, a Manatee County School Board member. Since you are pinned in a different order than I had just spoke, I'm going to call on you on the order that you're on the screen, and we will rotate that way with questions. This format is entirely different. It's going to be, the speakers are going to give just a quick background of themselves, and we're going to go right to questions that have been developed by our League of Women Voters of Manatee County members, and then we'll go to attendee questions. So I will start with John, if you could, and then move to Mary, then move to Misty, and then move to Pam. If you could give us your background. You're still mute.
He should be unmuted.
It doesn't show.
Oh dear, John. While you're working on that, John, you know, he shows as mute. Let me see, ask to unmute. We are not hearing you. Ah, well, let's,
Mary, say something and let's see if we can hear you.
Mary, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
John, we'll get back to you. Look into your settings and see if you can find something that says that you're on mute somehow. Like look at your computer itself. Okay, Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I ran for school board in the last election and for District 3, but it was a county-wide race. So I had the experience of getting to go out, you know, this is a big county, you know, let me just say that. Now coming forward, the school board elections are going to be single district. But as District 3, when I ran, had 5 opponents, there were 5 of us in the primary. And so there was no question there was going to be a runoff. So took it to the general election. But it was also the start of the time of COVID. And I'm a CPA. And so it was, it worked out well for me. Let me just say that, because, you know, I could do a lot digitally. But my background, I was a CPA, recently retired, and chose to run after 7 years on the audit committee. And so I came at it from a finance background. Been in the county since 2000, raised 2 children here. They both graduated and gone on, and yeah, it's been an experience.
Thank you. Misty?
Thank you and good morning. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this very important workshop. It's been fantastic. So my name is Misty Servia. I am a county commissioner for Manatee District 4. And this is actually my first term, and I'm about to run for my second term, or am running for my second term to serve South County. So a little about me, I'm a native Floridian and born in Sarasota, and my whole career has been centered around this area. The only time I've left this area is to go to Florida State and graduate college. And then my first job was back at Manatee County as an urban planner for the local government. I spent almost 18 years there, and was then lured away to the private sector. Didn't think I'd ever leave Manatee County as an employee because I loved working there, but did go to work for the private sector for 12.5 years. But public service has always been in my heart. I knew that I wanted to get back to it. And that's when I decided to run for election, because I had what I thought was a very good understanding of what the county government and the people want and what the businesses want as well. I'm married for 27 years. We have 3 children. We're now empty nesters. We have 2 in the military and 1 that just got out of graduate school. And I would say, you know, the reason that, like I said, I decided to run for office is I just think if you want to see the fruits of your work develop in front of your eyes, then run for local office, because we do things every day that affect your quality of life. You know, we work on parks and roads and sidewalks and schools and water and trails, and then try and manage all the growth that's coming at us, which is huge. We have about 10,000 new people a year moving to Manatee County. So that's it. Unless you want to hear more, I'm trying to keep it brief for you.
Yeah, because the questions will probably hit what your more is. So good. Thank you. Pam.
Hi, good morning. And I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters for doing this workshop. I've learned a lot myself, even though I've already been through a campaign. Native Bradentonian, went to Florida State and then reversed it and finished grad school at USF. So I kind of, reversed. 2 grown boys. Reason why I ran was because I grew up here and I've watched the change, and I wanted to be about being part of the continued change. And just wanted to be there and promote the equity that we, well, I sound like I'm campaigning, so let me stop. But it was just dear to my heart to be a part of making some kind of difference. You talk about it and you complain about it, and just being there. I work for the Manatee County School District. Mary, you're pretty much basically my boss. I'm a speech language pathology at a middle school. I enjoy it for the most part, not the paperwork, but I enjoy it. But I also enjoy governing and being a part of making things happen.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, and now we're starting the rotation. We do not seem to have gotten John back, and I'm not sure.
Can you hear me?
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
John, give us
I am
your.
back.
You are back.
I've reloaded.
Good, good, good. Okay, give us your background.
Again, thanks to the league. I really appreciate being invited to this and what the League of Women Voters have done over the years. It's a great organization. I'm John Chappie. I am currently the mayor of the city of Bradenton Beach. I moved here almost 48 years ago. Just about all of it has been on this same little dead-end street. I found my home and I said, I don't care what it takes. I'll do whatever it takes to be able to live out here. And I've been truly blessed. I was raised in a family where you do get involved in community, a lot of community stuff, Friday night lights, little farm community. And I just did it naturally when I moved here. One of the former mayors years ago, Dick Connick, some of you might remember him, encouraged me to get involved even more so by running for office. So that's kind of where it started. I've served as a city commissioner, as mayor, city commissioner again, county commissioner, and now in my retirement, I'm back as mayor of the city of Bradenton Beach, and I'm a lame duck now. So that's where I'm at here. It's about getting involved in your community, and why wouldn't you want to? It's a great gig, and I love it. There's ups and downs, but boy, when you can really get some cool things accomplished for our community, for our residents, for our visitors, it's great. I get more out of it, I think, than maybe probably the residents. And even though it has its downtime, our bad times, it's been worth every second.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I gotta say, John just finished running for office, and I have never seen that many yard signs that close together. He had quite a lot. Okay, we're going to start now with Misty, and for all of you, what made you choose? You're all a different office. You all made a decision to run for a particular office. What made you choose that particular office that you ran for? Misty.
Thank you. So I've said this in the breakout sessions, and in my intro that I really, truly love our community. And I believe that local politics is how you have the most meaningful impact on your day-to-day life. And so that is truly why I ran for office and why I continue to run for office. And it's not really for those of us living here today, but you know, as an urban planner, I'm always thinking 50 years ahead. So I hope that the next generation and generations that follow have a Manatee County that is as good or even better as it is today.
Thank you, Misty. Pam. You might as well stay on mute. You're going to be hit. You need to unmute. Yeah.
Well, the reason I ran for office was to be involved. I had planned to be a lot more involved with the politics of growth in my city and the change in the city. There was plans for that, so I unfortunately ran a little bit ahead of my plans because I hadn't fully retired from the school district. But just being about the continuation of progress, you know, the city of Bradenton, well, the entire country has made some significant changes in the last 50 years. And you don't want to see things go stagnant. So there was the opportunity, and I took the opportunity to run and represent an area that to some degree needed some more TLC and more focus on it. And that was really my motivation, no personal agenda whatsoever, just wanting to be a voice and help the continuation of progress. And as you know, Misty was saying, you want this area to still be flourishing and doing, you know, well for our grandkids and great grandkids, and it's just important to me.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I ran for office. You know, like as I said a little bit earlier, it's about getting involved. Local government is to me where it's at, and you know, you know, we're the grassroots, as Misty said. Every day of our residents and visitors' lives is affected by what we do at the city level and at the county level, state level, but mostly at the city and county levels. And I ran because again, I could see where the community was stagnant, and a lot of things were happening, not happening, I should say. The main angst for me was our commercial area was dying, which was Bridge Street. And I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and was introduced to a lady from Bradenton Beach who had this idea, and she asked me if I would work with her, and she asked 2 other people. And the idea was creating a CRA for the Bridge Street commercial area. And I've always felt that a community needs that sense of place, that destination to some degree, more so than just the residential areas, not more than that, but along with that, to have a thriving community to, you know, because there's always going to be change, and to try to have some control and guidelines in our community for, you know, where we've been, where we are, and where do we really want to be down the line. And for the most part, I think we've made a lot of good decisions in our community because of good people being involved, because of great people, good people running for office, and our residents that have also participated by communicating with us and working with the elected officials. And the elected officials not forgetting about what they're really there for, which is to represent the people and to try to provide the basic services along with other advancements that you're trying to do to better the community. And that's why I ran. And but that's the big reason why I also ran for the county. There was the disconnect at the time, I felt. County attitude back then was was not so much paying attention a lot to the municipalities. The county was the county, the city was the city, you ruled. But my thoughts have always been that we're all part of this together, and working together is key to having a successful community. And when I say community, I don't necessarily mean just Bradenton Beach or the other municipalities in the county, but the county and the cities working together and trying to understand the challenges that we all face together, and working together for that betterment of all of us, all of our community.
Thank you. Mary.
Well, I firmly place the blame for running for office on my son. So, he was a student at Manatee High for his whole high school years, and I was on the SAC. And at the time, I followed what the school board was about and what they were doing on some things, and I was a little astounded at some of the issues. So when they had their financial meltdown, I think it was 2010, I signed up for their audit committee because you had to be a CPA, and that was my getting involved, and those were volunteer hours for the whole 7 years. So I consider myself involved at that point. But I eventually realized I could accomplish more, and the committee is extremely effective, and things really did turn around in finance. But I realized I could accomplish more being on the board. And so I decided to run. Now, along that time, the whole time I've been on audit committee and all, I watched board meetings. And so I was really felt that even though I was not an educator, that I had the information, I had the knowledge about the district, which is essential. I think when you're running for office, you need to know what office you're running for, what the qualifications are. And so I thought I could bring something different, a different perspective and a different skill set to the board. So so I still blame my son.
Okay. Pam, you get the next question first. How did you pick your support team, and did you use a professional consultant?
Well, I did not use a professional consultant. That kind of money is hard to raise. I had a very small group, and I often refer to them as very small but mighty. There were a few people that had been a part of campaigns prior, and gave as much advice as they could. I had one particular person on my team that was much younger than the majority of us, and I refer to her as my magnificent millennial, because thanks to her, my small team became mightier, especially once COVID put a stop to the way we all functioned and operated, regardless of what you're doing. We just worked together to get the message out. And small but mighty. I can't say that I had, some big, expensive consultant team or anything, but I definitely had some really good people that were committed to helping get the word out that there was a candidate that was running for the actual reason why a candidate should run.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, for all of my city municipal elections, no, I did not use a consultant. I had my neighbors and some friends that volunteered their time and helped me through the whole process with city government. When I ran for county commission, I did use a consultant. And yes, it's difficult to raise the money. It's the worst part about running for office. But I think it's important when you're a candidate that you do that. It helps you. I think it helps develop you as an individual, as a candidate, and as an elected official. And because when you're doing that, you have that opportunity, and you make it clear that they're supporting you for your ideas and your thoughts, your character, the type of individual you are, and you let them know who you are, so there's no misunderstandings. And I did that when I ran for the county commission seat, and and of course I did have help, consultants for a little help putting up all my signs. So yeah, you have to have a team. You have to have a grassroots group. The larger the the larger the area, the county as compared to the municipalities, you do need more help, and that's difficult. You have a team, but they also have their families and jobs and things, so it's very difficult to get people at times to get things done that need to be done, because there's a lot of parts in a campaign to make it work and to make it successful.
Thank you. Mary.
Well, one of my first meetings to go in and ask for a campaign donation, the person said, "So you want to be a politician?" And I went, "No, I'm an accountant. I am not a politician." And it became abundantly clear as the campaign went on. I did not use a consultant, and did an awful lot of the stuff myself. So even though it was countywide and a lot of territory to cover, I didn't have a lot of money. I used, you all were talking about how much it costs to run. I put in 18,000 of my own money and had another 18,000 in donations. So it wasn't a lot of money. I did not have enough for direct mail, and so I had to get kind of creative on that. It was mine was not, just as Pam said, small but mighty. Where I got a lot of information, and I would encourage people to do it, is I had the really strong support by my side almost the whole time of a former school board member. And I knew all the school board members, so I could contact them and get advice. I called Misty because Misty had run for school board, and she gave me some really good advice, even though she wasn't going to support me. Still remember that, Misty. Yep, that was in the primary, but I would suggest that if you're running without a consultant, call people who are on the boards of the offices you want. Feel free to call me. I am really happy to talk about the mistakes I made, what worked, what didn't. And I made mistakes, that probably I know a consultant could have kept me from doing, but just seek advice.
Thank you. And Misty.
Thank you. Yes, and so I highly encourage everyone to get a professional consultant, although you can see you don't have to. I did run for school board unsuccessfully against the watchdog. I lost by a 0.5 percentage point. So I'm glad that Mary came in and took him out. No, Mary's been an excellent school district member, excellent school board member. So when I first ran for school board, yes, I had a professional consultant, and I will tell you, I had no idea what I didn't know. And then when I ran for county commission in 2018, I knew who I liked to work with and who I didn't like to work with. And I'll never forget being in a meeting with a very influential person who said, "Okay, so if you're going to run for county commission, this is the person you're going to use." for your campaign. And I remember saying, no, with all due respect, I'm not. I'm going to run the campaign. I want to run it. And I hope that you'll support me, and I'm not going to use your person. So do what feels right to you. And always remember that your gut instincts are probably leading you in the right way.
Thank you. John, you're going to start off next, and you may be saying what you do, because the next question is, how did you handle fundraising? And, you know, original ideas are welcome too. And was running for office personally expensive to you? And whatever other point you can make it at this point too.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to a thing that Mary had said, and Misty to a point as well. The consultants work for you, and you need to sometimes you need to let them know that, you know, because they will. They're typically not from this community. They don't know the issues as well as you might. And, you know, as a candidate, you just need to keep that in mind. They work for you. Yeah, they have expertise. They know how to do the mailings. They know, but you're the boss, and you need to make sure they understand that. As far as how did I handle the funding? The first time I did at the county, I did have you know, consultant, and of course, you know, there was the treasurer, and you need to keep on top of that. You just need to keep on top of money and follow it, whether you have a treasurer or not, just so you don't do something stupid. Because I did something stupid. My gut was said, as Misty was saying, your gut. But you know, I wrote a check after. I wrote a check afterwards for a bonus, and that turned out to be a mistake. You don't want to go there. You don't want to make mistakes. So you need to be on top of it. You need to go through the book and understand what you can and can't do with regards to the funds. And that was the only mistake. It was a minor violation, but it cost me, you know, it cost me with attorneys and everything just to cover it up, or not cover it up, get it taken care of, and pay the fines and make everything good. And that was done. And I, you know, of course I was embarrassed, big time. But you need to, as I say, you need to take responsibility and be on top of it. There was one point I wanted to make. Oh yeah, when your campaign's over, and I would encourage everybody to do this, and I don't know whether they do or not. I've done it on every one of my campaigns. If you have extra funds, give them to nonprofits. When I decided not to run after raising some money, I split it up to a lot of nonprofits. About $20,000 went throughout the county to different nonprofits. They need the money, and I think that's a good one. I just wrote a nice check from my mayor's campaign to finish out my account to a local community center, and so I would encourage everybody to do that.
Thank you. Mary?
Wow, well, there was no money left in my campaign, but for fundraising, I had a friend who was very connected with some donors, some larger donors, and he made the introductions. And so that was very helpful. One of the people that I talked to after the primary, because I really was wanting to do mailers and never got the money enough to do it, had given money to my opponent and said that he was supporting me. He, you know, and I said, what's with the check, you know? And he said, he asked, you didn't. And that was eye-opening. You have to ask.
That's right.
And I am very independent and don't like to ask people for help on things. So so that was probably one of the reasons why I ended up self-financing so much, because I'd rather pay it than ask for people to help me. But
Okay, Misty.
Yeah, so I'm kind of the odd one out. I like to fundraise. I really enjoy calling people and asking them to support my campaign. So when you're initially running, I would say contact all of the people that you know who are in business, who might be able to write those bigger checks, and ask for their support. And then contact all of your friends that you know and ask that they also support you. And it's not always just about the dollar amount, but it's about the amount of support, right? So even if it's $20, it's meaningful to say, you know, I have a broad range of support from businesses to residents, to families, to retirees. All of that support is equally important. And in addition to fundraising, I would say that friend raising is also very meaningful. So when you're not raising money, make sure you're raising friends and asking people what they need and listening to them and trying to help them.
Thank you. And Pam.
Well, starting off, it was also hard for me to ask for money. Being an only child, I'm kind of used to, you know, kind of taking care of things on my own. But first things first, I had probably the best treasurer that made sure reports were made, no matter if it was just $1. No, just making sure reports were made on time. That is extremely a major thing, as well as raising money, is making sure it goes where it should go and be reported as it should be reported. I pretty much started off with friends and family, ex-husband, and but then I was advised on who, you know, some larger possible donors to call. You know, unfortunately, most of those went with my opponent. But just being out there, I did get one mailer off. But I think what really helped was, because of COVID, I did what was called Zoom side chats. And it gave an opportunity to present myself, answer questions. A lot of times people wouldn't watch it while it was live, but it did get a lot of views afterwards. And in that way, there was, you know, there was a link to be able to donate. So a lot of small donations and a few big ones. But most of all, the time that people volunteered to help me get the word out. Couldn't knock on doors. So that meant not only was I making phone calls, but that mighty little team of mine was making those phone calls too. Very hard to raise money. I had a little, but I did a lot.
Yeah. Mary Lynn, do we have some questions? And we are starting with Mary.
No, I don't see any hands. I'm scanning our participants.
Okay.
Looking.
I have more questions. So
Well, I had a question.
Okay.
My husband ran for county commission years ago. The campaign was just amazing. And I want from each of you, what surprised you most that you didn't expect in your campaign?
And starting with Mary.
The biggest surprise to me was the amount of time. Well, I wouldn't even say time. It just becomes all encompassing when, for me, it did. I started my day with campaign stuff and ended my day, you know, it was nonstop. And I didn't decide to run until April. So I didn't have, thank goodness, I didn't have those earlier months to obsess about it. But it was just it was it was a lot.
Thank you. Next.
Misty, yeah.
Okay, maybe the most surprising thing for me was all the little nuances that you had no idea that mattered in a campaign. There are so many things, if you haven't run for office, that you have no idea how important they are and how much they matter. And that's why I really suggest getting a professional, because I learned so many very important and small things that will make a difference.
Pam?
I guess what I took away from campaigning was, well, I'm in education. So I guess I wasn't really expecting to be an educator during that time, but it was a bit of an eye-opener to have to even explain the difference in the level of politics, or level of government. People would sometimes respond to me and say, well, why are you doing that? Can't you do something about the tax, how much income tax we have to pay? I'm like, no. So it was just a bit of an eye-opener, just getting to share with people that, yes, locally we can, govern and in 24 hours change, the way we do things. County commissioners were able to put a curfew in place, just like that. But we can't necessarily change some of those federal level type things, So I guess it was a bit of an eye opener that I would be a part of making it clear to others as well as myself, what would be the realm of my level of government. And it definitely also taught me that we as a people can be extremely resilient, because during COVID, I not only campaigned, but we're also trying to learn how to teach kids online, 100% online for the last quarter of that school year. So just knowing that people were really resilient and also actually open to wanting to hear more about government.
John?
In looking back, I think what surprises me today, when I think back, I had fun campaigning. Because I got to meet a lot of people that I would have never been exposed to, and a number of them have become friends. That was probably the biggest surprise. And to people who are running or want to run, I did a lot of door to door. I've always done door to door in the city, and that's easily done because it's a small town. County, it's a little difficult, so you have to pick your areas. But I still did a lot of door to door stuff, and of course you're thinking, oh, I got to get out there, I got to do this, I got to do this. But I'll tell you, it took me all of 2 seconds once I got out there to talk with people. And just about everybody was very nice, very interested, wanted to know what I felt, or what I was running on. And as new to this, especially at the county level, and this is where it really hit home, because it's a whole different level of government, whole different level of expectations, I think, larger field that you're dealing with. So you have to, what do they call it, your elevator speech. You have to have something down there. You have to come up with something that gives you that smoothness when you're talking to people, and that you do know what you're talking about, and you do have an understanding of the issues and what's important.
John, we're gonna take a question from Ann Clement now. Ann, mute
Okay.
yourself, and let's give this to Misty first.
So I'm relatively new to Manatee County. I've only been here about 4 years, and so I'm just really familiar with the last election that was held. And what surprised me about the election was the amount of mailers we received that were very against one or the other candidate. As a candidate, how do you handle, do you just ignore those things that are not putting you in the best light, or how do you work with that?
Misty?
That's a really good question. And so that's where having thick skin, if you've heard that expression before, is important when you're a candidate, because guess what? Anybody can say anything about you, and it doesn't have to be the truth. So maybe that was another thing that was a surprise to me. The people can say whatever they want to about you, and it's rarely the truth if it's negative. So if you get those negative mailers, what I would say to people who receive those is you should ask yourself, who's sending it and why are they sending it? And then look into those packs and try and learn about them and who the donors are. Because if someone is campaigning negatively, it's because they're probably losing and they're trying to peel points away from the person who is winning. And I wish people would not pay attention to them, but the reason you see them is because they work. They're highly effective.
Pam?
Definitely have to have thick skin. When someone says something negative about a person, okay, personally, if someone says something negative about me, if it's not true, it's not true. If it's true, then it's something I may need to change or work on. But you have to just be true to yourself, and what comes will come. Just being you, and if you're not who is being presented in a negative mailer, you can't worry about that. You just keep going forward and being yourself. Thick skin, definitely need it before and after.
Thank you, Pam.
More so after.
Thank you. John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thick skin. You just have to. You just have to let it roll off your back and move forward. Do your best not to, let negative enter your life. It's tough sometimes, but like Pam said, be you. Be the person you are, and that you want people to get to know. Thank you.
And Mary, what would you add?
I will agree with everyone on the thick skin. I didn't have any negative mailers against me, but I certainly had, some unkind things said, and there'll be labels, and it just, if you can't deal with it, don't run.
Well, that's probably the very bottom line, that's for sure. We have another question from Karen, if you'll unmute, and we'll start this round with Pam.
Well, this specifically was for Pam, and others may weigh in on it. And one of the questions that had come up when CJ was talking was just how you get your message out there. So Pam, I was curious how, I liked that idea that you had with the Zoom side chats. How did you publicize those? And then where did you post the recording or whatever afterwards so that people could find it? And then other candidates can answer on how some niches or tips that they might have on that same kind of thing.
It was mainly a Facebook media type. It was on Facebook, advertised on Facebook. A lot of it probably was word of mouth as well. And I found what would happen is no matter how, I had a website and a Facebook page, and no matter how much I may have advertised that this is going to happen on a particular day at a particular time, a lot of people didn't really watch it live. But afterwards, as the word got around, then I would see the views would, add up. But at that time, the Zoom side chats were just strictly Facebook. May have been some Instagram. I don't know how to do Instagram that great, but Simone did do those kinds of things for me. But I think it was a little effective. And then, of course, there were different forums and different opportunities, the League of Women, Tiger Bay. There were, different ways that video type or virtual things were done.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, did you have any experience with a little niche type of outreach in addition to your door-to-door?
No, not really. When I ran for county, it was mailers and the Zoom stuff. I didn't really do anything online with Facebook. So no, I'm just the door-to-door and the mailers and my signs. I had lots of signs.
Lots of signs.
I'm a firm believer in signs. I really am.
Well, that certainly goes for the name recognition, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Mary, how about you? Did you have any experience with a kind of a unique way of outreach?
I had several things that I attempted. One of them, and I'm not even sure what to this day whether it had any success. I did some IP targeting, where people, would get ads based on what they were doing on the internet, sort of like Google. But I did the digital ads with Facebook, and be aware that Facebook has all kinds of hoops you have to jump through. So set up your Facebook advertising accounts early. And then I kept trying to get Google Ads to show up on the bottom of the newspapers, particularly the Herald, the Bradenton paper, because it seemed like anytime I clicked on an article, or it would bring up Gina Messenger's ad at the bottom. I'm going, how did she do that? And she wouldn't let her husband help me, so I finally just broke down and paid for the advertising. And even if people don't hit the paywall, they still would see the ad. So I thought that was good. Another one I did, because I didn't have money for mailers, but I had some cards and a lot of them. So the Observer took them as an insert in their newspaper, and it was very inexpensive. And they have a high circulation, so I was happy with that.
Well, that's a great tip. Misty?
No, I think walking and knocking is the most effective form of getting your message out, and then phone calls are number two. And I like to do a lot of those, but I also do a video blog that I circulate on social media and on my website, and I do a written blog once a month that I send to all of the newspapers in town, and sometimes they get published and sometimes they don't, but they're always on my website and then circulated on social media.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something to what Misty's doing? Misty kept it up after she got elected, and I admire so much the communication that you have with the public, because it takes a lot of time and devotion to it. And you've been doing that for 3.5 years, so God bless you.
And if I may, Misty, you also you were someone that I looked at and I was like, okay, there are other ways to communicate with people. And I love the way you would do those little summaries after a meeting. I'm not there yet, but I really like that because you let everyone know, or as many people as you know, what happened in the meeting immediately. And the league also does that very nicely too.
Great, great. Well, back to you, Alice.
Okay, if everybody, oops, did we lose a person? Oh, we're breaking down the rooms. Thank you.
I'm just removing the spotlight so we can.
Spotlight, okay, great. Well, it has been wonderful to hear the experience of everybody and a lot of wonderful tips. I'm sure that you'll probably be getting contacts from some people asking for some more information. I'd also really like to thank the League of Women Voter members, all that helped, so that this is this is the product of many of us, and so was the handbook. There's be sure to check our website, lwvmanatee.org. There's a lot of valuable information on there. There will be voters guides during the elections. There will be there is currently contact information for your elected officials. So if you want to contact anyone, you can go in there and get their address, their email, their phone numbers. There's also our calendar events on the homepage. You can sign up to get our newsletters, which includes the Board of County Commissioners observations. And you can also join the league from our homepage. So also, please join us for our February Hot Topics at noon on Valentine's Day, Monday the 14th. It is with Zoom, and the topic will be increasing voter participation. Thank you.
Great. Super.